Hello and welcome back to the 5th episode of Across the Wave, where we fill you in on all Delbarton sports that you missed over the past week and highlight some pro and college sports. I'm Lorenzo Scola, joined by Ryan Dooley, and we have a ton to discuss with you today.
Yep, well, let's kick things off where we always do, and that's going to be with the football team, who picked up their second straight win away at Pope John this weekend, 38-15. Again, their second straight win going into a bye week. They're back at 500. That's a huge win for the Green Wave.
Yeah, definitely. And highlighting some key performances in that one, after a big 38-15 win, Gavin Gallardi had a 100% completion percentage. He went 15 for 15 and had 3 touchdowns. Grant Van Rapp picked up a score on 36 yards. Kobe Irving Mason picked up a score on 63 yards. And Matthew Tafiri had a big game, a score on the run and a score in the air with a total of 80 yards combined. And on defense, 4 sacks for the Green Wave really propelled them to shut out the Pope John offense in the first half. And they had amazing offense too.
Yeah, and for moving forward, they're going to have a crucial bye week this week. Just heal up some injuries, rest and recover, and also game plan for their huge matchup the next week away at Bergen Catholic, the number 2 ranked team in the state. Every year the coaches circle this matchup on the calendar. It's always a big one. It's always a game you want to win against one of the New Jersey's powerhouse football teams. As I said, with a bye week going into it, they're going to have a lot of time to make sure everyone's healthy and make sure the game plan's set for this huge matchup. Following that, they're going to have 2 big home matchups against DePaul Catholic and Paramus Catholic. Hopefully they can close out this season strong.
Yeah, definitely. Just going to look to see them hopefully control the trenches against Bergen Catholic, because if they do that, they might be able to get an upset here and beat Bergen Catholic. All right, and now moving on to soccer. So after the Delbarton Invitational, the Green Wave have really not looked their best. They recently fell to the number 10 team in the state, Randolph, who they lost to 2-1. Randolph had 2 early goals, and the Green Wave got one late with Peter Wynn in the 77th minute, but it showed to not be enough as they couldn't get another. So now they fall to 7-3-1. And they haven't really been able to, dictate these games with their momentum and their great ball movement. And they really have been able to control the time of possession in most of the games they've won. So let's see if they can get back on track. However, though, they do have a big break, or they had one this past week, and now they come back after a 7-day break, looking to recover, get healthier, with some key injuries that they've been dealing with to Marcus Arthur, Will Antony, and Henry Kovacs, as well as working back in Owen Miller. And Cortland Martin still proven to be the top shooter on the team with 7 goals, Liam Murphy with 4. The team has a lot of young talent and great talent on the team, but they just need to control their destiny as they look to do that with what should be a great second round matchup today as the Morris County Tournament second round picks up, which we'll have a lot to talk about next week.
Absolutely, and you said it, the big thing for them was this week of rest. A lot of injuries plaguing that team. Just good to make sure everyone's healthy going into this huge stretch of games. So let's get into that. As we're filming this on the 7th, they're currently facing Parsippany Hills at home. Then they will be facing Chatham on the 9th. That will also be at home. And then following that, it's going to be away at Roxbury, who they just fell to 2-1 on the 11th. So yeah, a huge stretch of games for them. Hopefully they can pick it back up into gear, pick up some solid wins.
Yeah, definitely looking to see them pick up a win today.
And as for cross country, the team is currently competing in a dual meet, so we'll have more results from that meet for you all next week. And they also had some competitors at the Shore Coaches Invitational last week and some solid finishes. The top 2 for Delbarton were Ryan Leuenberg and Will Van Etten, both in the 17-minute range in the 5K. Great showing for Delbarton, especially at a difficult course.
Yeah, definitely. And now we're going to talk about a sub-varsity schedule for this past week. The freshman football team, they improved to 2-3 after beating Pope John 13-8, and they face the same schedule as varsity. So does JV, who have been really hot, improving to 4-0. They dominated that game against Pope John yesterday, 29-0. And JV soccer, they've had a great season so far. They beat Randolph 2-1, then they tied with Bergen Catholic 3-3, and yesterday they fell to St. Benedict's 3-1. Both teams were knotted up at half, but after halftime, the St. Benedict's team really just carried away with it and picked up 2 goals to win 3-1. They're 6-3-1, and they face Morristown today. Along with the freshman soccer team, they're 7-2-2. So all soccer levels are looking great, and they beat Randolph 2-2. Then they beat Bergen Catholic 2-0 and lost to Seton Hall 4-1. And excuse me on that, they tied with Randolph 2-2. So they really have a little bit of everything. And as we said, they play Chatham and Roxbury next. All levels of football, they picked up a win against Pope John. So great news for the football team.
And we also have some news outside of currently competing sports. Class of 2027 Finn O'Loughlin announced his commitment to the University of Alabama for baseball. He's currently the #1 player in the state of New Jersey and the top 25 player nationally. So just a great landing spot for him and a big announcement for him as he moves forward into this spring season. And also class of 2026, Gunther Newman has announced he's found a home for next year. He's going to be committing to Franklin and Marshall for basketball. Another great landing spot for him. Also some big news for the school as a whole. Delbarton has now been moved up from 12th to 9th in the country for high schools for athletes. Just a great recognition for Delbarton, who's put up solid numbers across all sports in the past year.
Yeah, and they really have a ton of great sports teams, and we're going to have a ton of fun covering those teams this year. Now, picking things up of some pro football, the Seahawks and Buccaneers, 2 teams coming in at 3-1, 2 top teams in the NFC. They had an electric game, both teams battling some injuries. That game ended in a 38-35 loss for the Seahawks as both teams are going back and forth, touchdown after touchdown. It was really going to be first to get a stop wins, and unfortunately, after a score from Tampa Bay, things were knotted up at 35-35, and a costly interception lost the game for the Buccaneers after the Seahawks missed a field goal earlier, which would have really, helped them maybe win that game. But Jackson Smith-Njigba looking like an all-pro receiver already this year. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars last night, they came back against the Chiefs after a 99-yard interception brought them a touchdown. And on the final drive, as they were down by 4 points, Trevor Lawrence gets stepped on by his right guard, falls, gets up, falls, and then picks it up and gets into the end zone. A great scene as they score 30-28 with 16 seconds left and pick up the win. They're 4-1, and they play the Seahawks next week. So those 2 teams looking great, will be a great game. And then in other news, Joe Flacco got traded to the Bengals after really, the Jake Browning hasn't looked the best. They really have been risky at QB, and Joe Flacco is a solidified veteran in this league. And that should be good news for Shadur Sanders, who will move up the depth chart.
Yeah, now going into college football, just an electric weekend with major upsets. 0-4 UCLA kicked it off, upsetting Penn State. That's the 2nd straight loss for the Nittany Lions, pushes them out of the top 25 and really harms their playoff hopes. After these 2 straight losses, one to an 0-4 team, things are really looking dim for Penn State right now. And also another preseason top-ranked team in Texas also falls out of the rankings following their loss to 1-3 Florida. And remind you, Penn State going into the season was ranked number 2 in the AP poll, and Texas was number 1. So the number 1 and number 2 ranked teams are both out of the top 25 with really a bad chance to make it into playoffs. Totally shaking up the board when it comes to college football. In other news, Alabama picks up a comfortable win over Vanderbilt 30-14 with a solid showing, and they've really picked up their footing. And they'll have another tough game next week. And we'll also have 7th-ranked Indiana versus 3rd-ranked Oregon coming up next week. That's going to be a huge game, especially for Indiana, especially with last year where they couldn't really prove themselves due to strength of schedule. Here's the strength of schedule right here. They're going to face a tough Oregon team. We'll see how that shapes up. A huge top 10 matchup there. And also 6th, Oklahoma takes on Texas. Now again, Texas is unranked. However, we do know there is star power on that team, and that can shape up to be an interesting matchup very quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just happy that my Buckeyes stay at 1, and that matchup against the Nittany Lions may not be as good as everyone really thought it would be. And moving on to our daily fantasy pick, my pick this week is Torrey Horton for the Seattle Seahawks, the rookie 5th-round pick who really has proved to be a stud for them and has emerged to be their receiver too. He has 3 scores on the year, and he had 15 points in week 3 versus the Saints and 10 last week versus the Buccaneers. So he's really moved up the depth chart, and him and Cooper Kupp are fighting for that receiver 2 spot. But look for Sam Darnold to continue to target him, as the team has had a shaky run game, so he will be getting the ball a lot with JSN.
Yeah, and for my pick, I'm going to go with Kendrick Bourne of the San Francisco 49ers. Really slow start to the season, but if you're looking for a guy with a high ceiling, look no further. Kendrick Bourne could be a great pickup for you. Obviously, the 49ers dealing with a ton of injuries, especially in their skill position core, and he put up 14.2 points last week on 10 receptions. Getting more targets, and especially with these injuries, he could pick up more in future weeks. He could be a great pickup for a bench spot if you just want someone maybe with a super high ceiling like him for very little cost as well. And also, the MLB postseason has been well underway. We saw in the wild card round, the Cubs beat the Padres in 3. Yankees took on the Red Sox and took them out in 3 with a huge performance from Ken Schindler in Game 3. Just electric stuff from a young stud like him. Also, the Dodgers beat the Reds in 2 in a sweep, and the Tigers beat the Guardians in 3, which moves us to the division series round now going on currently. Dodgers took the first 2 over the Phillies, and the Brewers also took the first 2 over the Cubs. Yankees with a brutal 2 games, allowing 27 runs combined, and they fall to 0-2 on the series against the Blue Jays. Mariners and Tigers is the only series tied, and they're at 1-1. Tonight, as we're filming, again, Tuesday, October 7th, the Mariners and Tigers have a game, and Yankees facing elimination at home. Hopefully they can prolong their season at least 1 game more. And moving on to tomorrow, which will be Wednesday the 8th, the Cubs will try to avoid elimination at home, and the Dodgers try to clinch an NLCS appearance at home. So 2 elimination games coming from the National League side. Also, there's an if necessary game for the Yankees, assuming they win one tonight. And also, there will be a guaranteed game between the Mariners and Tigers tomorrow, as that series is currently tied at 1.
Yeah, and that will do it for episode 5 of the Green Wave Across the Wave show. We've had a fun time creating these episodes for you. A great schedule in football, soccer, pro football, college football, and MLB. We'll have all those results next week for you. But for Ryan Dooley and Lorenzo Scola, we'll see you next time.